Real quick before we get into today's video, just want to thank the people over on Patreon who have taken the time out to help support the channel, and just got to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for your support. Once I start offering memberships and figure out what to offer for memberships on this channel, I'll start adding the names of YouTube members as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the review. Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys a review for Boruto episode 185. And now that episode 185 is done and in the books, we got a little bit to talk about in this episode. So I'm going to go ahead and say right now, I know some people are gonna be asking, why did this episode feel like it dragged out in some parts? And so a quick explanation of why they focus so much on the Boruto and Katasuke stuff is, number one, obviously from a narrative perspective, you want to slow this down and you want to give more credence to the fact that, you know, this is completing Boruto's character arc in the sense that he's moved past his dislike and hatred for scientific ninja weapon tech, and now you're getting to the point where Boruto's openly acknowledging the same thing that Sasuke tried to teach him during the Sasuke Shinden novel, and then Sasuke again tried to teach him after the sparring match with Naruto in chapter 16 or 17 of the Boruto manga, which you guys saw in the Boruto anime when Boruto used that water release. And then you again saw the evolution of Boruto's stance on ninja tech once he actually got a chance to go in the lab and see the different experiments that are going on. Here's some of the testimonies and stories about how Katasuke helped save Ao's life, how Katasuke helped save the life of that dog from the Inuzuka clan, and just little small things like that, and how you saw Sumire and you saw how with New, how scientific ninja weapon tech was helping her in that regard. And so you're getting the completion of that arc, and I mean, I'm okay with that, but this is where the drawback actually comes in. So I told you last episode they adapted a decent amount of content in that episode. Well, in this one they actually only did about the, I want to say the last 10 pages of chapter 20, and then probably the first 5 to 7 pages of chapter 21. So essentially, if this was a weekly manga, they adapted about one full chapter of content. This gives me hope that next week they're going to take this additional time that they have and they're going to add more to the Team 7 / Boruto versus Ao fight. I think that they're gonna add more stuff to it, because just on the next episode preview, there were a couple of sequences that I don't remember from the manga portion. Now, it's been a second since I've read the manga fight. If they add more sequences to it, next week's gonna be really, really good, because you're gonna get a really big moment from Mitsuki. But I wanna kind of back up though, because I don't wanna spend too much time talking about what's coming next. I wanna actually talk more about the actual episode. So I think most of us will agree that because this was a slower paced episode, more than likely the highlight for a lot of people is the new material. At least for me as a manga fan, the new material is what I enjoy, which is that moment where you have Delta and Code and they're kind of squaring off, and they're taking advantage of a few things that the manga never actually got a chance to highlight. Because if you've watched my manga reviews, you guys know I'm very critical of the manga, and this is one of those times where in the manga, one thing I consistently point out is like the snapshot method of the manga gets on my nerves a little bit, because there's a lot of scenes and details left on the table. The manga kind of uses info dumps at times, or the manga has a tendency to just tell us about character relationships and not actually flesh them out and show them to us. And so in the anime, one thing that we just saw recently is in this episode, they took the whole thing about Delta and Code having issues with each other, and they actually built on it. You hear me say all the time that show versus tell is a real thing, and every time you're in the room with an editorial assistant, the one thing that they're going to tell the author that they're working with is like, hey, don't just tell us that this is a relationship between characters. How are you actually showing the reader? Or in this case, how are you actually showing the viewer? And so what they've done in this current arc is that they've slowly over time just taken little small moments, and they've steadily built on the relationship, building the tension over the course of several weeks between Delta and Code. And you see it really bubble over in this episode, because you have Code openly accusing Delta of being the traitor inside of Kara, and you have Delta once again just picking at the relationship between Code and Jigen. And what I like in that moment right there is that they're showing us something that we didn't see in the manga, number one, but number two, they're also building up a plot line that is in the manga that we didn't know that there was a connection with Code, but they're strongly implying that the future plot line that gets revealed later on, there could be a connection with Code there. So I like how, once again, the anime's doing the little small things to actually build up the tension between these characters. And so when you have Amato step in, you see the tension completely bubble over, because Delta even turns on Amato and she's about to take this dude's head off, and you see Amato slowly talk his way down. It's kind of cool to see how the Boruto anime is basically playing its own version of Among Us in real time. So I thought that was kind of cool to actually see that element there. Very, very nice touch. Now, when it comes to the relationship with Katasuke and Boruto, this is one of those times where I'm actually glad that they did not actually go the route of an absolute snooze fest, which is just focus on the actual conversation the entire episode. That would have been the equivalent of the episode that was in the car actuation arc that I absolutely hated, where Boruto and Team 7 were stuck in that swamp pit with the dude from the Hidden Haze Village, and like 15 minutes of the episode was Boruto stretching out trying to reach the dude. I absolutely hated that episode. And so I gotta say, I like how in this episode what they did not do is they gave us the actual information that's in the manga, so I'm okay with that part. But when Katasuke had that moment where he's saying like, look, you know, I was brainwashed and I manipulated you, but the genjutsu actually amped up my own emotions, and I'm glad that during this time that I was able to rekindle my friendship with you. I was very much worried after seeing last week's episode that this week would be the equivalent of one of those episodes where they kind of cram in flashbacks. They basically redraw them and kind of use as a way to layer up the emotion that is going between the Boruto and Katasuke relationship. So I was worried that they're going to do that as a way to kind of further remind viewers of it. And so what I like here is that the director chose to believe that you had already seen the Versus Momoshiki arc and you're familiar with the backstory of these characters, and just leave that at that. So I thought that was a nice touch. The same thing like when they did the flashback with Mugino. In this case, that was something that worked well, because we as fans were able to go on that journey with the character during the car actuation arc, and at the tail end of the arc when we get the flashbacks with this character and everything, we're able to see everything that kind of drives his character. And I thought when you had Konohamaru having that moment where he's recalling Mugino's sacrifice, I thought that was a very well done flashback. So I love this director that we've had for the Boruto series. He's taken over for the car actuation arc, and I absolutely love what he's done so far in the car actuation and in the vessel arc. I think he did a really good job. Even the flashbacks with Boruto in the scientific ninja weapon tech department, and how they had those collages with the better uses of scientific ninja weapon tech, and how one of the last ones that he had as far as flashbacks was the dog licking Katasuke's face. I thought those were very well placed flashbacks. What I have to say is that Konohamaru, I like how Konohamaru essentially was pointing out to Boruto that, like, look, you know, this ninja world, it isn't everything that you thought it's gonna be. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. And Konohamaru tells him, like, look, man, the important thing is that we get this data back to Konoha. You need to take this detail. And the reason why is that he's telling Boruto, even without the Byakugan, Ao was still a very deadly ninja. And I think sometimes people miss that. Because we have a tendency in this fandom, and that tendency is we look at it and say, how many mountains can a character blow up? how many insane jutsu does the character have that can shatter entire multiverses? You know, I'm exaggerating a little bit, I'm using hyperbole obviously, but the fact is that we have a tendency to focus more so on the destructive power. And you know, one thing that I focused on my True Power series was, I don't give a damn how much the guy can bench press, how many squats he has, how many gigatons and all the other shit. Like, I'll leave that shit to the people at Screw Attack to kind of play around with numbers and calculations and equations. Like, I go wipe my ass with all that shit. I really don't give a fuck about the scaling aspect. You know, that's why this shit always used to bug me when early on people say like, your True Power series, you're power scaling. And I'm like, no. If you watch the video, you realize that this is not a fucking power scaling video. Very rarely do I actually scale the characters to other characters. That kind of goes against the whole grain of why I even did that series, because there's like 9,000 different ways to actually scale shit, and it gets boring when everybody does the same thing. So I want to kind of take an opposite approach. With Naruto, with all these characters that you see, characters like Ao, when you look at their ninjutsu arsenal, when you look at the various ways they've been trained, at any given moment, a ninja can cap your ass if you lower your guard, because all these ninja have these deadly abilities and they're very diverse. And so that's why I like to focus on the skill set of them. And so when you look at a guy like Ao, the Byakugan isn't necessarily the only thing in his arsenal. And so I like the fact that Konohamaru is telling them like, look, even without the Byakugan, this dude is somebody that you're gonna have trouble with. You're out of your league. You need to take your ass and run. And Konohamaru's acknowledging the only thing he'll be able to do is hold back out. Konohamaru, he's made peace with the fact that he's gonna go up against a ninja who's more experienced than him, a ninja who is arguably more skilled than Konohamaru, and a ninja who survived battles with Shisui Uchiha. And so Konohamaru knows that there's no way he can defeat Ao by himself. And with his young team gaining, his knee-jerk reaction is to protect them from Ao, because there's a good chance that Ao can kill all of them. Konohamaru's first instinct is that he's not willing to risk the huge gap in skill between the members of Team 7 and Ao in a battle like that. At least that's his knee-jerk reaction. And towards the end of the episode, one of the things that Konohamaru comes to grips is with the fact that Team 7, this is a team with 3 prodigies. They're all very powerful in their own right, even though they're at a disadvantage when it comes to skills, when they're at a disadvantage when it comes to the fact that Ao is very used to using this ninja tech that he has. And so Ao, between his experience as a ninja as well as Ao's ability to use his ninja tech, it seems like Ao actually has the high ground in this battle. And yet Konohamaru, he comes to a line of thinking that, well, if we come up with a strategy and if we execute it flawlessly, there's a way that we can fight together and potentially bring this guy down without actually having to suffer any losses. And that's a major gambit on Konohamaru's take, in my opinion, because he made the right decision. Like, look, I need to go ahead and hold this guy off. We need to get the intel about what's on the airship back to Konoha. But Konohamaru is convinced, and that kind of shows you that this new Team 7, they've progressed enough to a point where Konohamaru is willing to take their input into a situation, because if I'm not mistaken, Naruto's already said that they're at a tuning level at this point. So I like that you're seeing Konohamaru acknowledge the growth of his team. I gotta say, for an episode like this, I wasn't the biggest fan of the episode. Really, what actually saved the episode, in my opinion, was the whole interactions with the car organization. But I gotta say, there are aspects of the episode that are well done, but this isn't gonna be an episode I'm actually gonna go back and watch. My episode question to you guys is, should Konohamaru have been the one to play decoy, and should getting the information of the ninja tech and what was on the actual vessel, which manga readers know what was on the actual vessel airship, was that more important, or was Boruto right that they need to stick together and they need to eliminate Ao altogether themselves? And then the second episode question I have for you guys is, how do you guys feel about the questioning that Kashin Koji gave to Ao, where Kashin Koji asked Ao, like, hey man, are you still a shinobi at heart? Are you actually conflicted at this point? Let me know how you guys feel down in the comment section below, but as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.